Hello, this is the Harboring Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. Feedback is immensely important. Feel free to reach out. And also, as I mentioned, I'm going to continue to mention this. The holidays, Thanksgiving is tomorrow. And with Christmas, New Year's, and so forth, so many other holidays, feel free to reach out to me if you want to share memories, share comments, share thoughts. You have show ideas, feel free to email me. All right, so some of the audio platforms that I'm on Speaker, Spotify, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, Deezer, just to name a few. All right, so with Thanksgiving, really tomorrow, I'm going to wrap the Thanksgiving theme up for this month by talking about two heavy hitters when it comes to the field of baking. So I'm going to talk about Betty Crocker, the origin of Betty Crocker, and then Sarah Lee. Here we go. All right, so I want to jump into my thoughts before I get into the aspects of these two giants of companies here. Now, my thoughts. I think baking is, it can be, this is me personally what I think. It's something like a shared, treasured experience. So what does that actually entail, what I am referring to? All right, so I'm going to put it in this perspective here. So when I was about 6 years old, my grandmom, she wanted me to have, and I mentioned this a little bit, but I'm going to really, give the point of view about this here. So I don't need to explain. You guys get it. You guys are well together. So let me just start talking about it. All right, so she said, Mary, you need to start learning how to cook and start doing things. So I'm going to teach you how to cook an egg. So here you go. I was like, I don't want to. I don't know. What is this? She's like, it's okay. I'll walk you through it. Let me show you what to do. And I'm like, okay, sure, Grandma. So me not understanding, she was simply trying to share what she did, her experience when she was a child, because she had so much love and care and understanding for me, and she understood the basics of knowing how to be self-reliant. And then as that, it's really something because when someone you care about so dearly, and it really means a lot. And this is really relatable, but this is all makes a whole lot of sense here. So and you just never know how much time we all just never know how much time we have on this earth. And when the Lord wants to take us away, He takes us, and we wants to take us on home, He takes us on home. And it's really something how you reflect on things when that your loved one has passed on. Because my grandmother died at really young age in my life. She was about, unfortunately she died of leukemia, and she was about 80. And I was 14 at the time, and that was something. And then I had another dear grandmother. I barely knew her. And she cooked really well. And I was 7 when she passed on, and I was just really devastating. And all of these memories here, they influence my aspects about the importance of being able to cook, specifically with baking. And how I see baking is a aspect of showing your love for someone, showing your appreciation. And the best way to do that, I think, besides being there for somebody and besides showing support for somebody, is through food. Oh, I'll be right back. Sorry. And now, when because this is, being able to cook and then bake is a thing of its, a experience of its own here. When those who love to cook, y'all know exactly what I mean by that. When you're gathering the ingredients and you're depending on, you have a large family or a small family, and the way that you present everything also, it shows that, the attention to detail and everything. It shows a lot of how much you have, how much care you have in everything with cooking. Either you like it or you don't like it. And like everything else, even the things that you do like, sometimes it can be a little nagging, depending on from day to day, cooking day to day, everyday meals, and, so forth. But even within, you rein yourself back in and say, hey, it's for your family. It's fine. So, with the aspects, you get tired and you're like, oh, I gotta do all this. And then that's the importance of meal prep and everything, especially when, depending on what kind of job you have and so forth, that can really help out with the aspects of frustration and all of that. So getting back to companies like Betty Crocker and Sarah Lee, they are in the business of relieving those headaches here, so to speak. But I personally, I really have such a joy for cooking and everything, especially now that I have a family of my own. It's really something. But it's nice when there are companies that understand that not everybody has that attitude about cooking. Not everybody can cook. And then not everybody has the, adequate time too. And so it's even better when the products really taste like as if your grandma or your mom or your grandfather or your father cooked it. And the long tradition of how that evolves is really endearing to the aspects of the American spirit. Because despite all of the pink noise and stuff about, America this, at the end of the day, America is really a treasured place. And specifically when we go back and we think about, we should reflect on this in the holiday seasons, especially for Thanksgiving, Christmas, and so forth. Because we are all in a country that gives opportunity to those who work hard for it, and it will cultivate. And that can't be easily said in a whole lot of other countries. And it's one of those things that you really have to take into consideration. Sometimes people have this attitude, oh, the grass is always greener with saying, hey, look at, what's going on in this so-and-so country. Hey, they have all this here. But they don't take the time to actually understand what does that entail and then reflect back to what they have right at their own doorstep. So with all this said, I'm going to get into the facts about both of these companies. Here we go. Okay, so of course, sources will be provided for you. All right, so it says, I'm starting out with Betty Crocker. It says the origin of Betty Crocker dates back to October 1921, when the Washburn Crosby Company in Minneapolis, Minnesota, launched a promotional contest in the Saturday Evening Post. The Saturday Evening Post is an Americana tradition in itself. Yeah, because with Norman Rockwell and before him, these imageries of the aspects of the American frontier, the American life, and holding on to traditions was very prevalent in this. With this company in this news magazine, and it's like a magazine and do this corporation here, and the fact that they were clever enough to understand, how to implement the impact, then give sort of residency to Norman Rockwell. It really implemented the aspects of what that imagery of Americana really looks like. And even in the transitions of the aspects of, which is a testament to, being in a time where people could really say things and be genuine with what they say, and not try to, look like they're just pandering. So what I'm saying by this is Norman Rockwell even took the time, when we get into the aspects of the civil rights times and, the aspects of the problems with segregation and all that, he took the time to paint a scene of the Brown versus the Board of Education, and to generally show a depiction of how just disgusting and cruel that can be when people get into this sort of hedonistic ideas about their way of life, what their way of life should be, and how they think that they're protecting their way of life, but they're not understanding how that's really sad, and that strips away from, progress here. And he even admitted in the aspects of him, which is understandable, and that's what people do not fail to understand about the aspects of these things, and that's what's really, prevalent and should be in much respect for the aspects of, being and being American, and then also being human, because you only know what's around you, because if you don't know, you just don't know. And he said that, he didn't really understand the aspects of, African American experience and all of that, because he was not in an urban city. He was in a small town, upper north, I think, or so forth, and he didn't understand all that. And the fact that he took the time to say, oh, geez, and then reflect on that really speaks a lot about the aspects, again, about how prevalent the American spirit is here. So, here we go. Let's get back into it. Says the contest invited consumers to complete a jigsaw puzzle to win a pincushion shaped like bag of gold medal flour. Along with approximately 30,000 completed puzzles, the company received several hundred letters with baking-related questions. In response, the company's advertising department, led by Samuel Gale, created a fictional female persona named Betty Crocker to answer these inquiries in a personal and trustworthy manner. The name Betty was chosen for its friendly and wholesome sound, while the surname Crocker was borrowed from William G. Crocker, a respected retired director of the company. An informal contest among female employees was held to select the most distinctive signature for Betty Crocker, and Florence Lindbergh's version was chosen and remains in use today with minor revisions. This fictional character quickly evolved into a national figure, gaining a voice in 1924 with the debut of the Crocker Cooking School of the Air, a pioneering radio cooking program. So I am going to delve deep into this on the Betty Crocker website. But before I get into it, I want to talk about this. So this is, again, what drew me a lot to the aspects of advertisement. Advertising in itself, when it's done very well, is very, it really can be a mirror on our society at large when it's done right. And listening, and now y'all are listening and you're hearing the ins and outs of how this company melded itself into what it is. It really states a lot about what was at that time, pivotal and part of the really mainstream thought process about cooking and the female influence with cooking, and how impactful that is on our culture. So with this said, I'm going to get into the story, deeper into the story. So it says, the phrase "call me Betty Crocker" isn't something any of us throw around lightly. It's deeply rooted in American culture, from music, books, film, and television to even the inside of some of our favorite celebrity pads. So Betty Crocker is there. We helped shape America's homes, kitchens, and tastes for a century. Sure, it did not happen overnight, but it did happen thanks to our Bettys, aka all of you. So it says they're saying, let's take a moment to collectively brush off our shoulders the whisk we've taken over the years and delve into this. All right, so the history of Betty Crocker. As I stated before, it says it started in 1921, and they're saying that we do look good for our age. That's really funny. So, who could have guessed that a simple contest by the Washburn Crosby Company could have given birth to such an icon? The contest called the home cooks to solve a jigsaw puzzle for the chance to win a pincushion shape of a bag of gold medal flour. Started this all. So Washington Burn, a flour mill company and a predecessor of General Mills Inch, was surprised to find himself suddenly just in flux with questions from home cooks who used the competition as an opportunity to ask for an expert about baking. But who could have offered the public the spoonfuls of wisdom of to help out American cooks who were hungry for the thirst of knowledge about cooking? Enter Betty Crocker. Now, Betty was not a single person. The name was created as a way to personalize responses to questions, and if you guessed it, that the name has a meaning behind it. You're quite right about that. So Crocker was chosen in honor of a popular company director, and Betty was selected because, well, it sounds friendly. So that's a little touch of history. But there was one final element indeed needed to bring Betty to life. The Washington Crosby Company invited their female employee to try their hand at Betty Crocker's signature. A distinctive winner was chosen, and it is still used today. And it's also talked about as an icon. Wow. So, wishing and experience. During the time comment to consumer service and product quality was expanding. So much of the company started with sponsoring cooking schools across the country and employing home economists to carefully test and demonstrate its gold medal winning flour. The demand for baking information continued to grow along with the staff. This was the start of the world's renowned Betty Crocker kitchens. To this day, the makeup of the kitchens of Betty Crocker kitchens is comprised of creative cooks, bakers, dietitians who make the recipes, answer your cooking questions, and carry on the tradition of creating kitchen-tested recipes that reflect the ever-changing taste of America. So, all right, so make it more into this. All right, so it says education. Along with kitchen test goodness, education makers, bakers, and whisk takers has been at the core of Betty Crocker since 1924, when daytime radio first cooking show took off. So Betty Crocker Cooking School of the Air was that. It would later expand to 13 regional stations, and graduates of the program who completed reports and submitted them to Betty for grading, the numbered 238, which to be exact was the first year, and ranged in age from 16 to 82 years of old. So due to this immense popularity, the cooking school became a program on the fleeting and associated with the NBC network, and would make the world a better place for 24 more years to come. I would say, okay, so we may not tune into the radio for cooking schools anymore, but the spirit of Betty Crocker as our own kind and worldly expert in the kitchen continues to this day. So from classes to cookbooks to kind, friendly experts in the Betty Lab, if you're not familiar with the Betty Lab, it's a place where we inspire young makers to create, learn, and innovate through STEM. And it's very important to understand that to the next generation, especially with children, to have a thirst for wanting to cook and wanting to prepare, because that in itself gives them the growth and opportunity to know how to be self-resilient, and that is spectacular. All right, so raise a spoon for the First Lady of Food. So Betty has been an icon through every pinnacle moment of American history. At the U.S. Office of War Information Respect, Betty Crocker hosted a program called Our Nation's Radios. And see, this really goes hand in hand with food and war and time of this, and then also having that warm, gentle touch of connecting to the people during really hard times. Companies that do this, they really stand the test of time because they understand what the importance of what service does, home, heartfelt, down home, again, to that service does to implement the attitudes of how people feel about certain things. So it says, Betty Crocker hosted a radio program called Our Nation's Rations. So the program helped homemakers make the most of their ration food, and almost 7 million copies of Betty Crocker's wartime booklet, Your Share, were distributed. Betty's wartime efforts did not stop there and were recognized by the American Red Cross for outstanding service and the national interest. From humble beginnings through war, the Great Depression, and a rapidly changing America, Betty was a bright and unstoppable force, so much so that in 1945, Fortune magazine named Betty Crocker as the second best known woman in America. So, women need a champion. So what does this mean? It says the power of sentence. This is a powerful sentence that was stated above. Well, that was inspired by the 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 Manier Child Huston. This was a home economist of General Mills, who was the brainchild and voice of Betty Crocker throughout her formative decades. So Huston recognized that women not only wanted but deserved a bright, smart, and inspiring women that could relate to, and turn for guidance and inspiration. Wells cheers to that. So while today Betty Crocker is a champion for not only women but all makers, and it led to the intelligence and creativity of people like Huston, and tracks the journey of women's and increase in influence on American culture. In the late 1940s, Betty Crocker transformed into a full-fledged television star. Between 49 and 64, actresses Adelaide Harley played Betty Crocker as one of history's only living trademarks. Adelaide, in her role as Betty, appeared in various programs on CBS and ABC, and in the Country Watch. As she showed celebrities and icons of the day how to bake like Betty. So Betty was also taking the radio by storm. So the Betty Crocker search for the All-American Homemaker of Tomorrow competition was created in the late 70s. So this was an interest of high school seniors competing for college scholarships and a trip to the National Award ceremony based on their knowledge of cooking, baking, and household management. And that's something that's very important. And they understood about the aspects of that and how that's lost in translation a lot today, about the importance of being able to find that balance. I mean, that's great to have aspirations to be a career woman or career person. But, hold on, I'll be right back. But, again, if you don't have the aspirations of doing things for other people outside of yourself, are those really aspirations? So, let me go back into this. So, the success of Betty's many cookbooks paved the way for her favorite monthly magazine. The first, which hit America's supermarket shelves, was in the 1980s, and it's still growing strong. So these days, Betty's iconic recipes can be found not only in cookbooks, but also on websites and also with social media. So Betty's reach did not end in the United States. In the mid-1950s, she landed in Canada and swiftly moved across the globe. So you can find Betty on shelves in the UK, Iceland, Saudi Arabia, Mexico, Australia, and throughout Europe. Also in the Middle East and Asia. So, this is pretty cool. So it says, on October 21st, 2021, Betty turned 100. And they go on to say, thank you for trusting us to be a part of your lives and in celebration of your lives. And they said, let's raise our red spoons to the next 100 years to come. And how special is that? And I'm gonna transition to Sarah Lee. I mean, these are testaments. This is a testament to the aspects of why brand loyalty is so strong with certain companies, because they understand they don't go on a trend for and then after the trend is over, let's go to the next thing, and there's no foundation that can be stand on that. You know, they stand their character, they stand their ground about certain things, and it's implemented in this company about the impact and power that being traditional has, in our society. All right, so with this said, here I am going to get on to it and talk about Sarah Lee. All right. It says the origin of Sarah Lee Company traces back to 1935 when Charles Lubin and his brother-in-law purchased a small chain of neighbor bakeries in Chicago, initially named Community Bake Shops. Lubin, driven by strong entrepreneurial ambitions, later parted ways with his brother-in-law, and in 1949 he named his first company a cream cheese product. Let me rephrase that again. So in 1949 he named his first product, which was a cream cheese cake, after his then 8-year-old daughter, Sarah Lee Lubin. This led to the business beginning to rename kitchens Sarah Lee. So the brand gained national recognition after being acquired by the Food Corporation and Consolidated Food Corporation in 1956, which later renamed itself Sarah Lee Corporation. So in 1985, to reflect the brand's prominence, the company's legacy is rooted in, it reflected the 1985 is when they reflected the components of the company, the power of the company. So the company's legacy is rooted in a commitment to quality and taste with their products. All right, so let's get on to know some more about this. Here we go. All right, so there's a lot. So let me dive into this. So this is entitled The Strange History of Sarah Lee, told by 5 notable brands. So Sarah Lee Corporation, was once a stereotype of the global conglomerate running multiple brands in multiple sectors and countries across the globe. So at times it seems as if the folks of the corporations of the old headquarters down Grove, Illinois, were more like investment bankers and food executives. So few companies in the history of the food business which launched, sold, and bought, merged, and spun off to so many brands in so many times. So it says that Sarah Lee Sarah Lee could trace its roots to an entrepreneur named Nathan Cummins, who brought a number of businesses in the years around World War II and later established a grocery supply group called the Consolidated Food Corp in 1953. So 2 years later, he brought a series of Chicago bakers that operated under the name the Kitchens of Sarah Lee. Those two businesses consolidated, and Sarah Lee remained the core of the corporation for decades. So by the time 1985 popped, that corporation changed its name to Sarah Lee, but long before that, the company started buying. So one of the first acquisitions was an English muffin maker called Wolferman's, which dated back to 1888 in Kansas City. So those muffins, along with the cakes and desserts, sold under Sarah Lee's brand and widely spread first throughout the grocery chain and served by consolidating and then on to the rest of the retail worlds. So by the time 1999 came, Sarah Lee sold the brand to Williams Foods. All right, so I'm going to get into my thoughts before I get into some more facts. The aspects of the story behind Sarah Lee is interesting, but it also is a marker into the aspects of what ultimately, even though what's going on, behind the scenes, ultimately reflects and is prevalent to the consumer. There is an interesting question about this. A lot of powerful people in the advertising business, they say that there's, a nuance to the aspects of the impact of advertising. And then also some people have the aspects of, you buy what you buy. But what does that mean, you buy what you buy? I think personally, a lot of that has to do with how the image looks with what you're buying. Because and then also, word of mouth says a whole bunch to the impact of how prevalent something is, Just because something looks good, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to stay, it's going to stay on the market. If it doesn't work and it's crap, then eventually it's going to fade out. But I think when you merge that image, a really well thought out, well developed image, and you really pay attention to how people think and see things according to the times in which you live, and you keep relevant, that really is a benefit into the aspects of how a company or a product stays on in the market. And I think that this is a really good example of that. So let's go on here. It says, and this is from the Sarah Lee website here. So it says, and they go on to talk about what I was mentioning before with Charles Lubin and the first cheesecake and naming it after his daughter. And it says the standard of perfection has changed the way America enjoys desserts several times over. From pioneering to the preparation of fresh frozen desserts to packaging them in ready-to-use full baking pans. Sarah Lee has brought the joy of fresh, delicious baked goods to America's homes for generations. So, from humble beginnings as a small Chicago bakery to becoming an industrial leading innovator of frozen bakery and desserts, they have never lost sight of the purpose of their values. So they believe that there is always a better way. They sweat the details so you don't have to, and keep things simple for you by meticulously crafting irresistible products made from quality ingredients for unmatched flavor and homemade appeal. Over the years, they have expanded their portfolio by acquiring notable brands that share their passions for exceptional bakery and adding innovative offerings, including allergen-free and clean label options, all backed by the state-of-the-art research development faculty in Chicago suburbs of Oak Brook Trace, Illinois. So Sarah Lee Frozen Bakery also operates bakeries in Massachusetts, Michigan, North Carolina, and Washington to bring delicious baking even closer to the valuable customer. So, let me get into the purpose and then end by saying the baked by hardworking hands. So, great tasting food is our passion, so we want each bite to delight and inspire, and we listen into what the customer wants and needs. And our growth and then profits comes from what they understand, the growth and profit of the company, and the people too who have, and then of course now the heirs. That's why they're still in business, because the company is so successful because they listen to the consumer here. So truth and transparency leads the way with them, and they are proud to be the stewardess of trust that our customers and consumers and employees have in us. And they say with 6 trusted brands, Sarah Lee, Chef Pierre, Bistro Collections, Vans, Superior of Man, and Cyrus O'Leary, they offer a wide variety of versatile flavors that you can choose from. So I'm going to end on this. I think that both of these companies are truly the aspects of what's important about America. If you cultivate something, you stay with that cultivation. You have a team that understands how to implement that cultivation. It can truly happen. Even though, you're getting a monkey muff of things being, traded and changed, and so everything that's going on behind the scenes, when we get into Sarah Lee, and then, there's other companies like that. But at the forefront, there's strategic aspects about that. That's not always a bad thing. Something, you have to figure things out in order to make things better. So with this said, I greatly appreciate all y'all for listening to me. And happy Thanksgiving and on to Christmas and the New Year. Take care. All right, so this is just the end of the Harboring Light. Tune in, turn up, and definitely take care. Bye-bye for now.